Hello and welcome to the Full On Football podcast. Today we're going to be doing a whistle stop tour of the World Cup in Qatar so far. We don't have time to talk every game, so we're just going to do checkpoint games, really. Games that are sticking out for us. Game that sticks out to me for me to start with is Argentina losing to Saudi Arabia 2-1. I felt like that was the first one that shocked the world, really. The Saudis brought a lot of fans, as you'd expect. It's not far for them to travel from Qatar. How big of an impact did that have in that game, do you think, H?
Well, the atmosphere was awesome. Really shocked by the atmosphere. I think the Saudis can drive over the border. I think that's why there's so many. I think they can literally drive over into Qatar, which seemed to make a difference. The atmosphere was awesome. Seemed to ride on that a little bit. I think Saudi were ranked like 50th in the world going into the game, so it was hardly going back to England, Iran. Although we dismantled them, they weren't very good. 20th or 19th in the world. We thought, Christ, this might be a team. Saudi were. That's one of the biggest underdog stories I can remember. Obviously, looking back years gone by, before I was born, there was probably big upsets. But in my lifetime, I think that's probably the biggest scalp I've seen, or certainly that I can remember.
Other than England, Iceland, maybe. That's the one that
Of
always
course.
haunts me. Argentina, pre-tournament favourites, the side that I predicted that were going to win it. You predicted three sides to win it, and they were one of the three. So
Yeah.
you've covered your back a little bit more. Not very impressed. Obviously, going 1-0. And with these games, sometimes if you go a goal down, I know it can be tough. It can be tough to get the first goal in these games. It's similar to England again against Iceland. When you go a goal up, there's no excuse. The floodgates should open. And we see that later on in the Spain game. But with Argentina, where did it go wrong?
Mate, it's a good question. You're absolutely right. The fact that they went 1-0 up suggests that they should have just tanked them. And I know, people say they had a couple of goals ruled out for offside in the first half. Yeah, but they were offside. There was that one that was a bit questionable. Um, they just didn't, they were just going through the motions a little bit. No excuse to lose that game. Once they got 1-0 up, they should have won by 3 or 4. To me, there's not too many differences between the side in 2018 that were awful to this side, other than the fact that now they've got a couple of competent defenders. It seems to me that it's very much people are just passing the baton on to Messi continuously. No one's really got the bottle and the bravery to take the ball and be the guy to win the game. I felt like that 4 years ago. I feel like that again today, especially in the second half when the going got tough. They were behind. They needed a goal. No one really had the aura to go and grab the game by the scruff of the neck. It was very much down to Messi. Now, obviously, it's good to have that trump card there, but I think teams are too good in this day and age. If you can find a way of stopping Messi, which I think now you probably can. 10 years ago, you probably couldn't, but I think now you can. I really think you can with how physical, how organised teams can be, to potentially just mark Messi out of the game somewhat. I think you stop Argentina, and that's why I was shocked. But to be honest, mate, I probably based a lot of my prediction on the hype around Argentina. I didn't know a lot about them. I know they've been on a bit of a run prior to the World Cup, and obviously it's come crashing down against Saudi Arabia.
Why was it that you thought that Argentina? Why did they make one of your three sides to win it? The trophy share that you envisaged, three sides lifting that trophy come the end of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the hype, mate. I think I've bought into it really. I didn't. There was no standout side, and I've probably just looked at it being Messi's last World Cup. He's hit a bit of form this season after the. Honestly, I probably just looked at it and thought it's a fairy tale. His career has often been a fairy tale, and this might just be the moment that they put it all together. Because despite the fact I still don't think they're that good, and they've never been good in my lifetime, they've probably had a more balanced side now than
Yeah,
perhaps they did. They were always very
definitely.
top heavy with a couple of midfielders that no one's ever heard of and a couple of average defenders, a couple of average centre halves. Look at the goalie, what a good goalie, a couple of steady defenders, and a bit more balance, in the midfield, and obviously still have Messi in the side. So on the basis of that, I thought they probably had the ingredients to be one of the teams, albeit I never was convinced that they were that good. There's just no standout side.
There is no standout side. That's the reason for me they were going to win it. As I look for international football, there is nobody that stands out like Spain in 2010, like France in 2018, Germany 2014, Brazil 2002. There's nobody like that this time round. And I just personally thought the momentum factor, 36 games unbeaten, we saw that with Italy going into the Euros, carried that momentum through into the tournament and went on to win the tournament. That was where I scored it to Argentina. Moving on to Germany. Just touch on Germany. Germany have always had the reputation of they are just a semi-final minimum, aren't they? Semi-final, even the final, that's failure. But semi-final is just bread and butter. Like same way that England will qualify for the tournament nearly always, with winning 10 out of 10 games and will be dominant against all of the rubbish opposition. I don't mean to be disrespectful with the rubbish opposition. Germany, their bread and butter is a semi-final. Every tournament they're at a semi-final. Yet the last two, we're looking at a round of 16 in a group stage. This German side is not that good. And I didn't think they'd lose to Japan. It doesn't come as a massive shock to me.
Why? Why don't you think? What did you envision happening to Germany then coming into this tournament?
I thought they'd go through the group in second place. I thought that when they go through the group, they'd come up. The moment they came up against a decent level of opposition, they'd get beat.
Why is that? The lack of a striker, the fact that they're a team that is that the worst German side in your lifetime, probably?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. I think for the previous two tournaments, obviously going back to 2018, I think it was just one of those things where we've seen it a lot that the holder of the World Cup seems to go out in the groups. That voodoo, I did think would probably get broken at some point, and I think France will be the ones to break that. But yeah, I think that was just one of those things. But the Euros side, when they played against England, like wasn't anything about Germany I feared other than just the Gary Neville nostalgia of the past. You know, they always seem to do us in tournaments. Other than that, there was no logical reason, man for man. I looked for their side. They're not bad. I'm not trying to say this is a country with an 80 million population. It's their first sport. They're always going to have a good level side. But in terms of measuring them against the sides of the past, they just don't weigh up. I don't think they're bad by any means. I'm not quite sure they know their best shape. I'm not quite sure they know their best team. They've got some exciting players coming through. I referenced Jamal Musiala, but other than that, are they that? Do they threaten me that much? Would Havertz make the England squad? I've used the word squad there of 26. He might do, but I think it's a question. I don't think it's a guarantee that he gets in England's 26.
No, it's a great point, mate. It's a great point. Havertz feels like a square peg in a round hole. He will score a couple of goals, but it's not natural to him. You mentioned Jamal Musiala. Watch the game. He was outstanding for them. He is a freak. In the way that we look at Jude Bellingham, I think in Germany very much look at Jamal Musiala. He is the bright spark, and he does terrify me in some ways because I think he has got that, just that. What's the word I'm looking for? Just like that naivety that I don't care who
He's
you
very
are.
raw. He's very raw. He
Yeah,
doesn't care. He'll just attack you anyway, won't he?
absolutely. And he is very much the bright spot for them. But like you said, do they worry me? Joshua Kimmich, Gundogan, very solid midfield, but they're not gonna. I don't feel like they're. I know Gundogan. They're both very good, but they don't terrify me. I'd fancy us against them. Thomas Muller, unbelievable professional, but again, I don't think he's going to grab games by the scruff of the neck. Serge Gnabry, players like that. The back four, I think, is pretty average. Nicolas Sula isn't that good. Rudiger's got a mistake in him. Fullbacks don't impress me really. So yeah, I go along with a lot of that. Jamal Musiala is the bright spot for them, but if you again a lot of as the theme with a lot of these teams, if you can keep one player quiet, I think the rest of things probably look after itself. But
Yeah,
again, just on the Japan game, in terms of an upset, I know you weren't that shocked. I think it's great to see these upsets, like the first week, seeing Argentina lose. That's great. Seeing Germany lose to Japan, I think just having those underdog stories and having teams winning is just makes it more fun. If Germany had won 4-0, if Argentina had won 4-0, it sort of takes the fun out of it, and you feel like it won't get going until the quarterfinal stage. But this time, albeit there's a few 0-0 draws, you feel like the World Cup has started already and is in full flow, as opposed to waiting for a couple of the big games to get excited about.
another big upset in Group E was Spain versus Costa Rica. 7-0 to Spain.
I was upset the upset being that Spain scored.
Yeah, exactly. So before the tournament, I think you've been listening to Gary Neville too much, contradicting yourself on a regular basis,
Yeah.
and referencing Spain's fact that they're not going to score many goals, I think was what you said. Well, what was it that you actually said?
Well, Gary Neville's obviously come out and there was a meme on TikTok and stuff today about him saying before the game, don't know where the goals can come from. And I haven't listened to Gary Neville. I do listen to him a lot, obviously, but that's not where it's come from. The last Euros, I think they drew a lot of the games 0-0. They were winning games 1-0. They couldn't hit a barn door. They just didn't have much flair going forward. And I've looked at their front four going into this World Cup, and it's virtually exactly the same. Ferran Torres, Dani Olmo, Asensio. I don't even think Asensio plays for Real Madrid most weeks. I didn't think there's many goals in that team. I expect them to score because they'll just naturally have 75% of the ball against virtually any team they play. But I just don't think they had enough to really trouble teams. And I'm probably looking at Costa Rica and remembering back to the 2014 Brian Ruiz World Cup and thinking that Costa Rica are some side, but they clearly weren't after folding inside sort of 10 minutes against Spain.
So this is an example of what we referenced earlier. Spain score first, the floodgates opened. Your point around not having a goal scorer, I think you're talking about tight games. In tight games, who's going to make that difference and get a goal? And this 7-0 doesn't change anything for me. That doesn't mean that problem's suddenly fixed. They're a good football side. They're going to have a lot of the ball. In 70% of the games they play, they're going to score a goal. And if they score a goal and go 1-0 up, they'll pick you apart. They'll probably score 3. Fine.
Would they be one of your favourites?
No.
Not at all.
No, for the reasons that you referenced, I think in the tight games where it's 1-1, where it's 0-0 and you need a goal, I don't see who gets that goal. I was in Spain when they played against Switzerland and got beat at home. And it was very much, again, I think they had 80% of the ball, but they couldn't break through. And Switzerland beat them 1-0. So, again, I'm not saying that will always happen. They are an incredibly good side. They've got a lot of good players, but as Spain always are, they're just if they could pick 11 midfielders, they would, wouldn't they? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They don't have a balanced side. I do still think they lack a deadly striker. The deadly striker that they have is Alvaro Morata, who his career is something of it's quite difficult to articulate because in terms of ability, he's got it, and he shows up every now and then. I'll just say Jigo.
He's played for every it feels like he's played for virtually every top side in Europe.
He's had every excuse taken away from him, and he does it a little bit. He's a bit part man, isn't he? He's a bit part man. He's done it in the first game. It's great. And then, you play against Germany, perhaps, if you need to win to go through in the group, or you play in a knockout game. And does he show up on that night? And that's where he earns his money. So that's why I don't think Spain will win it. Will they go far? Yeah, they will. I think they'll probably get to a semi-final, depending on the draw. Would they beat England? I've just got a funny feeling they probably would. Again, I don't think they're necessarily better than us. I just think stylistically there's something there. I think they beat us. I'm not sure Spain are that good. But this is a state of the tournament. I think Spain, Netherlands, their side, they're not that great. They could do a semi-final. Belgium aren't that great. They could do a semi-final. Spain could easily do a semi-final. Just depends on the draw.
On to Belgium. Then I didn't watch the game yesterday. I was reading the commentary going through. I trust that you watched it. Seemed to me that Canada more or less bossed the game and were very unlucky not to get something, which is surprising. Obviously, Belgium ranked second in the world, incredibly, despite the fact they're not one of the favourites to win the World Cup this time around. How did the game go? What did you think of Belgium? Are they over the hill in terms of that goal generation? There's a lot of talk about this being their last chance. Do you feel like they've got a chance?
Not a big chance, no. It is the last chance for the golden generation because it'll be a lot of their last tournaments. You've got Vertonghen and Alderweireld starting as centre-back yesterday, which I think they both play in Belgium at the moment. Hey, it's not all about where you play. Gareth Bale plays in the MLS, but I don't feel like you're going to win a tournament with a centre-back pairing that plays in the Belgian league. Maybe that's very naive, but that's how I feel. Feel like there's definitely, it's the last chance for the golden generation purely because of the age of the core of the group. But if you'd watched the game yesterday, there's nothing to be worried about with Belgium. Again, would they beat England? Probably. They've got a bit of history against us, haven't they? But
they've got our number a little bit.
They have got our number a little bit. Was there anything to be worried about? No, not at all. Canada were by far the superior side, particularly in the first half. They just had too much youthful energy for Belgium and they couldn't deal with it. The legs in that Canada side, Jonathan David, Alphonso Davis, they had no answer to it. And as you can appreciate with Alderweireld and Vertonghen, trying to chase players out wide, England, you likes of Sterling and Saka, how would they deal with that? I'd be fascinated. If we were aggressive and took the game to them, I don't think they'd have an answer to it.
When I seen on Twitter this morning that Kevin De Bruyne got man of the match, was he their best player, or was he just very much the only player that wasn't awful for them?
I'm stunned by that. I didn't see that he got man of the match. For me, and maybe this is really controversial, I thought Kevin De Bruyne had the worst game I've seen him play for a long time yesterday. I thought he was
Really?
really poor. Yeah. Yeah, I thought there was a lot of times. It's not that he was really poor by his standards. He was still decent, but there were a lot of times where the final pass and he got it wrong. He'd overhit it. He'd get the angle wrong. He'd put it behind the guy. There were several occasions where he did that. I didn't think De Bruyne was very good at all. Belgium grew into the game a lot more in the second half, a lot more control. But I saw that Canada had an XG of 2.8.
Wow.
So on another day, they just scored three, which again, you could, if you'd watch the game, definitely you would say Canada were at least a goal better. Or do you think Canada could sneak through in this group? Spain, Costa Rica, Belgium. I think it's tough now they've lost that first game.
Um, no, that's a different group, isn't it?
Sorry, it is Morocco, Croatia. Croatia. It's very tough now they've lost the first game.
Yeah, great point. That's the thing. I think if they'd got a point by what they performed, then yeah, I think they could. Because the nature of it, that Croatia draw in, Croatia feel like very much similar to Belgium. In fact, they're slightly over the hill. I think back from 4 years ago, I feel like they're slightly aging side. They don't worry me that much, albeit Modric is still as good as he was, which is baffling. It's a shame, mate, because like you said, if they deserve, I'm always very much like if they deserve to get something from the game, I'm gutted if they didn't. And missing a penalty, first goal in a game is everything. I think they're up against it. I do think they're up against it. Having said that, if they're as good as people are saying they were, then there's every chance that they could win and draw and potentially still go through in second place. I'm just glad that Belgium were as bad as people are saying, because they are one of the teams that worry me. And the fact that, like you said, they haven't got any legs in their team would play into our hands if we were to play them.
Would completely play into our hands. So just a final one from me. Belgium, can they win the tournament? How far can they go?
Um, Not very far. And the reason I say that, I look at a lot of the teams that we talk about being okay. Your likes of the Dutch, France, obviously, we haven't touched on them, but they've got a very youthful side. I think the youthful nature of a lot of these teams, England, another one. If Canada can cause some problems with their youthful energy, I think that as soon as they play someone half decent, Alderweireld and Vertonghen will get found out. They're both mid-30s. They've been over the hill for about 3 years. The fact that they're still playing baffles me. So yeah, not very far. As soon as they play someone decent, if they can avoid everyone, then great. But I doubt they will. I think they'll be out by the quarterfinals.
Vincent Company was in the studio watching a game. I think he even brought some boots along just in case he got some minutes.
Yeah,
So, all right, mate. Cheers for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next roundup that we do. Take care.
Cheers, mate.